Good morning, everybody. I too would like to take the opportunity to thank the Sand County Foundation, not only for what they've helped me with and winning the award, but I think what they do for conservation in general. I think it's one of those organizations that just does what all of us want it to do so that we don't have to recreate the wheel, and I'm really proud of their efforts. I kind of have a story too, just like Todd did, but mine is on the other side of technology. I work at a bank in Buffalo full-time, and one of the things that we've recently done is there are several of us on a technology committee that are not technologically savvy. And the reason for that is they want us to try to figure out how to navigate devices and software and which ones work the best for us. So we recently were testing iPads, certain types of laptops, and all these types of, I guess, computer type of things, if you will, so that when we go to the next step, which is close loans at our customers' operations with e-signature, that we know what we're doing. Well, I got the iPad. And one of the things that they told us to do is they said, own this. We want you to use it for personal. We want you to use it for bank. We want you to really understand this device. So I'm all proud of myself and becoming a minimalist with paperwork and all. Had all my notes on my iPad. What I did not know is that on certain situations, if you go through airport security with magnetic screening, it disables your iPad. So I get to Denver all proud of myself, going to review my notes and do a good job with my presentation here today, and my iPad is disabled. So after 2 hours of technical support at the library over here at the University of Lincoln, or University of Nebraska at Lincoln, finally found out that the only way to recover that is back home at the computer I synced it to. So, excuse me if this is a little bit random. Our operation is 20 miles east of Buffalo. It's right on the edge of what they call the Powder River Breaks. The Powder River Breaks are extremely rough terrain, not the best soil type. Right on the edge of significant mineral development for uranium, oil, and gas. Our operation also sits right in the middle of that. Some of it does not have that development, and some of it does. Kind of what Todd said there. I like my neighbors as well, but I don't want to see them. And I think that this picture here that we took on some of our high country a couple years ago when we actually looked pretty good at the ranch kind of sums it up. You know, in agriculture, and it doesn't matter, in my opinion, whether you're a small farm and you've got, you know, houses and an urban mix around you, I think we all want to preserve open spaces. And I feel like that in the area that I represent, that's what we're doing in ranching, is we are preserving open spaces, not only for our benefit, the security of this country, but also value for the public. I do believe the public wants to see this type of landscape rather than, you know, metropolitan or urban sprawl. My quote is up there that I kind of set the theme a little bit of this presentation on. Quit thinking about decent land use solely as an economic problem. Examine each question in terms of what is ethically and aesthetically right, as well as what is economically expedient. All things is right when it tends to preserve the integrity, stability, and beauty of the biotic community. It's wrong when it tends otherwise. It's interesting because that fits me probably to a T based on my economic background, and then the fact that I've also had to basically create a ranch from scratch. And then with a full-time job, things have to be expedient, because I kind of have two jobs, I guess you would say. The background, my kids are the fifth generation. My great-grandfather, one of them came from Germany, one of them came from the Basque Country. In 1998, my parents wanted to retire, so my brother and I split the ranch in two. I took one side, he took the other. He was the older, so he got the first choice, and he took the headquarters. It was an easy split because my parents had purchased the ranch that I'm on about 10 years earlier, and it was exactly the same size as our home place. And so the only challenge with that for me was it was on a different drainage. It was what we called our winter pasture, the way it sets. It was south facing. It had no improvements at all. It was 3 pastures, and so I had to kind of turn it into what I thought was a more feasible operation to run, including building headquarters and cross fencing and all that stuff. And so with that, also, we had lived in town at that time, and we decided that it was important for our children to be raised on the ranch. And about that time, we also had natural gas exploration and felt like it was necessary for us to be there to kind of monitor the day-to-day operations. Because when it came in the boom fashion. We all hear the boom and the bust, and the boom almost to me is a lot worse than the bust just because it all happens before you even know it, almost. So with that, we started conservation tactics and research trying to figure out how to solve a couple of the problems that I was dealt with this endeavor, excuse me. That would be, you know, how to cross fence, how much cross fencing to do, where to put headquarters, what was our stocking rate going to be, those type of things that we were looking at. We have participated in EQIP, WIP, and NRCS programs. We have a major leafy spurge problem in that area, and then we set right in the heart of the greater sage grouse core area in our state, and so we're in a habitat rehabilitation and improvement program. And then what kind of grazing plan should be established? You hear about all kinds of grazing plans, whether they're intense, whether they're open range, all kinds of programs. And so we kind of met in the middle with that, which I'll explain a little bit later. So conservation from scratch. Really didn't know a whole lot about it. And the problems that we were dealt with were weeds, production. I needed to maximize the efforts of the ranch like most of us do. Time and labor, me being gone all day and having just the evenings and weekends to work. Wildlife issues, declining mule deer population, and then, of course, the not endangered but threatened species of sage grouse, and then wanting to balance all that with a way of life. So the way we tackled the weed program is my research, when I was in Texas at Tech, I had a lot of friends that were from South Texas, and they raised meat goats on their ranches. And we always heard about them and heard about this boar goat from South Africa that was selling for $50,000 at the time, and like, okay, that's nice, sounds like the llama ostrich play. And so I came back home and I thought, well, maybe those goats really do eat weeds. And so we actually went back to Texas, found a ranch that was willing to teach me Goat 101, and brought back 10 head as a research project. We fenced them in electric fence in a pile of leafy spurge. It was probably 10 acres, and thought that 10 goats would probably be there about 3 or 4 weeks to eat the weeds. They were done with the weeds in less than a week, and there was not anything left, but all the grass was. So the weed and pest and myself thought, wow, this does work. So the next year, we decided to go all out, and we brought 1,000 head of goats to the ranch, and they were there for, I think, 5 years, and then we started reducing numbers. We also, at that time, were in the middle of a pretty severe drought, and one thing about weeds is weeds will grow in a drought. They don't really care what the conditions are. So kind of the long story short there is we did successfully eradicate our weed problem with messing with 1,000 head of goats. Today we're able to run 100 head to keep the weeds in check. We kid them through a shed. Their kids and the moms are enough to control myself and 2 neighboring ranches. So we're pretty proud of that, just because that was a really huge cost savings tying back to economics. With the decision to reduce back to 100 head of goats, we actually did some research with GPS collars over 4 years. Actually, we did it over 5 years, and what we wanted to see is, I kind of noticed that they were really acclimated to a certain area and would continue to go back to their favorite spots. Now, for 5 years, we did have a herder with them, a full-time herder. But then after that, we let them go, and we wanted to see what was their travel habits. Well, as you can see, they're 4 years here, and they pretty much found a place to call home. And so they circle back and forth through that area, which is where all the weeds were on my ranch and 2 or 3 neighbors. And that is when we made the decision to downsize the goats, that we didn't need that many anymore, and that they could do this job on their own, that we didn't have a herder, which was a relief for me, because as much as I enjoyed learning Spanish, I'm not very good at it, and it was constant work. Obviously, you have to constantly be in touch with the herders and make sure that they're all right, and I worried about rattlesnakes and horse accidents and all that stuff. So that was a relief to know that the goats finally caught on and wanted to be there. There's an example of leafy spurge. Now that picture actually was taken probably about 2 weeks ago, and as you can see, outside of it is where the goats are and cattle. Inside of it is a control area. We wanted to show what it did look like in the beginning and what it would look like without the goat control. And that's significant because those goats control probably 15,000 acres. And that's how bad it was, not everywhere, but in certain areas, and in areas where there's the most productivity loss from grass. So, in my opinion, economic viability and aesthetics plus ethics does equal conservation. All of the tactics that we've developed on the ranch had to be economically viable, and that's why they were chosen. What comes along with that is the way it looks. We wanted to leave grass, but the grass has an economic benefit. And then ethics, it is the right thing to do. I don't even know how to talk about ethics, just because I was raised where you take care of the ranch, like most of us were. And you know, for a while, I think there was the general opinion of the public that, you know, farming and ranching was abuse of resources. And I look back, and what I learned as a little kid, from this high up with my dad, always just in the back of my mind hearing him say, well, we gotta leave, we gotta leave some grass, we've gotta go, or we gotta sell some cows. You know, it was never, we're gonna abuse the ranch for money. And I guess that's the ethics part, and I think all of us are on the same page with that, is when you put all that together, you do have sustainable conservation. I mentioned that, my heritage is Basque, my wife is Basque. There's a small, I guess, cultural group where I'm from in Buffalo that it is of Basque descent. And when we've been to the Basque country, that's our family's house over there. It's interesting in Europe how they perceive conservation, and it is just such a part of their everyday life, because they truly have to rely on their little farms. Those are farms, you guys. I don't even know what they are, but they're no bigger than 100, 200, 300 acres sometimes. Now, there are bigger operations, but those guys raise their families and sustain themselves on that small of acreage. And now they do not leave anything unused at all, but everything is conserved. Our family milk sheep, and so what they do is, like, all the manure is sprayed. Now, they have made technological advances, of course, so they come out and they pump it into a truck, and then they go out and they spray it. And they drive along the top of the road and they will spray that manure, and they do that like every 2 weeks. And it's just what they do. It's very interesting. And so, you know, with that, I guess I feel like, you know, conservation starts 200-300 years ago with our ancestors, because they all experienced the real life effects of what do you do if you do abuse your land. Those guys don't have a choice other than to take care of it. A little bit about my family. Of course, it was important to raise the kids in an agriculture setting. All three of mine do enjoy the operation. We do talk about conservation all the time. I try to ask them questions to make them think about things, and also know the difference between right or wrong. It's a different era that my children are growing up in, of course, than I was raised in. They have a lot more opportunity to do other things. They are involved in 4-H and FFA, and that's just a little bit of a slide to show you the crazy diversity of our operation. I'm not sure if you can see it, but this is a sage grouse lek. This is one of the largest leks in the core area. It happens to be on our ranch. There's about 70 males on this lek, and that's large because for every 70 males, there's probably a female. This is a little bit later in the year, so the females have already been bred and they've left to go nest. But you have to be out early and to do your counts. And that is become a major concentration for us in trying to improve their habitat, because we want to see that species sustained, but more importantly, we don't want to see them listed on the endangered species list, because that has great ramifications for us as private landowners on what we do in the future per the Endangered Species Act. Some of the things that we've done to help with that is we've put up fence markers on new fences, and we've done that based on science research that says that sage grouse mortality is higher in areas where you build a new fence because they're not used to it and they'll fly into it and kill themselves. So we've utilized this as an educational opportunity, kind of what we were talking about last night with some FFA kids to come out. I actually used their labor to put up the fence markers because we had to do it on about 8 miles of fence. And so they came out and they clipped the markers on the top line. But at the same time, we talked about the education about why it's important to preserve the species, everything that we're doing in our best effort to try to prevent them from being listed. And that's kind of a close look at what they look like there. Of course, barbed wire and birds don't mix very well. Along with that is just kind of our general concept with pasture rotation. That's my son trying to turn some cows in a gate, and they didn't want to do it. But anyway, we have what I call a moderate rotation grazing system, and that is based on the fact that we don't have a lot of rainfall. It's nice to see this country around here that's green, but we're definitely in a dry, high desert topography, and so you can't have an intense rotation period because it doesn't work unless you get rain for regrowth. And so what we've done is we've just designed a moderate rotation period where we, every other year, rotate pastures so that we're never going back twice during a growing season. One pasture will always get complete rest during the year. Some pastures get rest during the growing season and then are used a little bit later after seeds develop. And hopefully we're doing the right thing with native seed rejuvenation and plant growth. Water is also important. One of the things that when we started this rotational grazing system in several areas of our ranch, we used and utilized reservoir water. We also have a pipeline in certain areas, but one of the problems with rotational grazing and keeping care of your grass is it does slow down your runoff. And so what we found in our reservoirs is they've gone way, way down, even with ample rainfall, because the water is retained up upstream, okay, upland, which is a wonderful thing because I'd rather have grass and a water problem. We can solve the water problem by extending onto pipelines or whatnot. But it was one aha moment that I had in going through some of these practices, which was very interesting. That's a group of our heifers. And then it was very important for me to teach my kids, and I'll try not to get emotional about this part. This is where it gets strange for me. When we moved back, I grew up on the ranch, and the best memories that I have are when, my dad, along with him, I never knew that it wasn't fun, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I just went. I didn't have a choice. I had to go, but I didn't care. I didn't know that it was a drag, because it wasn't. It was fun. And so I wanted my kids to understand and respect things. The biggest thing, I wanted them to develop a work ethic, number one, and I wanted them to develop respect. Respect for their neighbors, respect for the environment, and respect for livestock, and respect for, like, my father and my grandfather before me who put this together. And so that's when my wife and I decided that we better raise those kids away from town. So they're all involved in it. This is my youngest daughter. She's tagging a calf now, a pretty gentle cow there. But, we actually give them their little duties that they do. Why should anyone care about my conservation? My success is your benefit and my failure is to your detriment. And that last statement is really meant for the general public, in my opinion. And the reason being is because if we don't all conserve our resources, we're going to lose them. I was thinking last night about ourselves. If you don't use your brain, you're going to lose your brain power. If you don't take care of your body, you're going to lose your body. If you don't take care of your resources, you're going to lose your resources, or they won't be as productive. I truly believe that grazing in the right way, prescribed grazing, is a benefit to resources rather than no grazing at all. And I've experienced that myself. One year, kind of just a side note on that, one year we had ample rainfall, we're understocked, and totally didn't use two pastures at all. And I thought, I'm going to feel good about this. I'm going to let them recover, not going to use them. The next year, we had significant snow. That winter, we had significant snow. It beat the grass to the ground. It was that much snow, and then it iced over. What happened in draw bottoms was interesting to me. It smothered the ground, and weeds grew. And so I thought, I'm not sure I'm a believer in complete deferment because of that. Now, I can see thinning it out, but I don't know if I believe in complete deferment. I think it should be used to some extent. Now, maybe that was a fluke, but that's what I noticed. And I think that we do have a public responsibility to manage our resources. I think we do need to get over the fact that, we're for private property rights by God, and it's our right to do what the heck we want to do on our operations. I think that in this time we've elevated to a different playing ground where we do have some social responsibility. And part of that is for our industry and the way it's perceived by the public. I think we do have to do the right thing, and it's time to listen to them. And I think most of us do. I feel like we're turning towards a direction where we respect the public's opinion and want to portray the correct image for agriculture support and conservation support in general. Just a couple shots of a little bit of branding time. And this is my last slide, and I guess this is the point of everything for me is, conservation is ongoing. My father passed away a year ago, my brother passed away 3 months ago, and I'm the last one now. And of course, not completely expecting at least my brother passing away. And so who's next? That would be me, I hope. Not tomorrow, but I hope it's me. And the point is they have to carry this on. And so I feel like I'm going to do the best job that I can to teach them the responsibility of conservation and the appreciation of it, so that all the work that my great-grandfather did, my grandmother, my father, my brother, and myself benefits those kids, and that they continue on, because we all know they're going to have new challenges, whether it's regulation or whether it's environmental challenges. And I think the biggest thing we can do is teach them how to think, and how to think about options and what's the right thing to do. Of course, I always preach economics to my kids and the value of why we make our decisions. But that's why I said it's to be continued, because it's never done.
Thank you, Ryan.